I see light because I see women like us sitting and having these conversations that I don't believe have been had in the past. When you're doing something like EC and or cycle syncing, where people haven't accepted that there's another way to do things, when you're doing things because you are a woman who does life differently, you are going to have to be the person who speaks up more, who has to advocate for herself before people catch on. That's why this work is so important. This is how we change the world.
Hello, hello. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather, your EC Mama Bestie, and this channel is where I show you how you too can naturally potty train your baby from as early as birth. You may also know that I host a paid membership community for mamas on the journey to EC their babies, and every single month I bring in a guest expert to teach on a complementary topic that can help to support mamas as a whole person so that they can feel their best and have the most successful journey with their baby. Because when we are feeling our best, that is when we have the energy to do EC successfully and to stay present and connected with our babies. In this week's video, I'm actually going to share an excerpt of November's conversation with guest expert Allie Evans, who is a life coach and fellow entrepreneur who came to teach us all about cycle syncing for optimal health and wellness. And she shared an entire fantastic presentation all about how we can tune into our body's natural rhythms, whether we are bleeding regularly, we are pregnant, or we are postpartum and have not actually gotten our cycle back yet. And then at the end, we had a Q&A as well as some very interesting conversation about how the Western medical system does not really fully acknowledge women and women's actual lived experience with their bodies. I'm going to share some excerpts from this conversation with you, and I welcome you to join in the conversation in the comments. If you have ever had any of these things happen to you, or you can relate to the disconnect that we discuss as it relates to how our bodies on a monthly cycle do not really fit into this go, go, go workplace that is really built for men's bodies, then let me know. Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think about this conversation. But before we get into the presentation, I do want to take a moment to tell you about the brand new workshop that I am teaching next week. If you're watching this in real time when it is released, I am teaching a 3-day workshop on November 19th through the 21st. This workshop is for parents of babies 10 months or older who have been practicing EC with their babies previously to now, so either starting as a newborn or starting sometime in that first 10-month period, and now you are feeling frustrated and discouraged because your baby is resisting the potty, refusing the potty altogether, or they're peeing or pooping in their diaper immediately after you put them on. If you are saying yes to any of these things, this workshop is for you. This workshop is here to help you ditch the diapers once and for all so that you can finally experience true diaper freedom and empower your baby with toilet independence that is right around the corner. I can't wait to share this with you. If you want to learn more, check out the link in the description below, and you can go ahead and register today. I'll see you there. All right, let's get into the presentation. The reason that I love to share other experts who are working in complementary fields, who are also serving women, especially in this postpartum space, is because so much of our success in EC is related to our success in motherhood and in our bodies and our mental health and our physical health. And if you are not feeling your best, you're not going to have extra energy to stay present and focus on EC. And so I really want to support you ladies as whole people and whole mothers, because that is really how you're going to be in a space where you can focus on EC and you can take care of your baby in this way. So I'm just really excited to share all of these other beautiful ladies with you and their work so that we can learn from each other.
I really want to echo what Heather was saying. It's like you cannot be your best self if we're not understanding who ourselves are or having the energy to even do that. Because I know coming out of postpartum, no matter how far or close you are to it, going through those experiences, raising your children, like it's something that requires a lot of your energy. And you all are magical human beings who are deciding, I'm going to do it differently. And those are the women that I love to speak to because, it would be easy to just say, I'm just going to put diapers on my kid. I'm just going to roll with that. But you're like, no, like, is that what's best for my child? Is that, the kind of foundation I want to build for them as they're growing. So I'm, again, just overly grateful, through the moon, to be here and be able to share this with y'all today.
I love the way that you've framed up like what we can be focusing on in each of these different phases, that this is like where our body naturally wants to lean. So how do you reconcile that and apply that in a world where so much of what we do is on a daily or weekly rhythm? And including as a business owner and content creator, like most of my business activities are on a weekly schedule. Like the weeks, every Monday I publish a video, every Tuesday or Wednesday I send an email. I'm trying to create content 5 days a week. So much of my work is daily or weekly, but our bodies are meant to be on a monthly schedule. So how do you reconcile those things? Because even if we know this information, but we're still living in a world that expects us to produce on a smaller rhythm than that. Like, how do you work with that?
That's such a good question. It's really the focus of my course, other than the like learning these pieces and going deeper, is like, how do I apply this, right? Like, how does that make sense? Because the world doesn't work for us. You're 500% right. So slow, that's my like number one piece. And like, as women, like, I know you have a community and you are a driven woman, right? Like, you're just like so excited to like, and you're like, how do I just I'm going to change my whole life right there, right? Because you've gotten this information. The reality is, the things that last are the things that we take our time with. So slow. Sometimes it's just starting with boundaries and communication, right? Even if we're starting this world at home. So when I actually started cycle syncing, I was in a corporate job. So in a corporate job, it was time blocking my calendar. And I worked in tech, and I wasn't like a higher up or anything like that. I had a really good track, but I was a customer implementation specialist, which was kind of on the, not the lowest end, but making my way up. And I would put those time blocks. And let me tell you, it wasn't as like simple as I put these, blocks in my calendar and people respected them. No, I mean, I had a manager who said to me, like, why are those in there? Like, and it was a woman, same woman. And she was just like, why do you have to have those? Why do you have to have, you normally have 15 minutes between meetings, like on your calendar. Why do you have to have 30 minutes during just this week? And I had to communicate. I had to be confident with, well, my energy is neither is yours, darling, but I wasn't there to tell her how to live her life. I wasn't educating about it yet. I was just trying it. I was like, well, my energy's lower, right? Like, I had told her that Tuesday, because when I first started working, I had said to her, I was like, well, Tuesday is just my low energy day. That wasn't necessarily true. I felt like it at the time, but when I started tracking, I was like, no, it's just Tuesdays where I have my period, or I'm in my luteal phase, right? Like, it just felt like it was every Tuesday, because I'm a Monday person. I love Mondays. So a lot of communication, a lot of trial and error. It's not like the world is just going to be like, all right, yeah, you're cycle syncing. But I've heard some really cool stories from clients I have a client who started a new job in sales, and she let them know that she lives her life rhythmically, like she lives her life on their rhythms, and they just accepted that in her contract. She's like, I'm going to be prioritizing different things in different days and different weeks. So it's unfortunately, it's a lot of self-advocacy right now, as the world is learning more about women's bodies and how this works. As an entrepreneur, we forget often how much control we have. This is my thing. And I sit with clients week after week, and I'm just like, you get to choose. That's why you went into entrepreneurship. It's a big part of it, is because you don't want someone else to tell you what to do. So why are you trying to run your life like it's a corporate job? You left because you don't want to be in corporate. So let's do this a little bit differently, right? Again, slow and steady. I'm not saying blow it all up, but if you know your cycle, which you do, now we're going to start to track that with the moon, right? Look at what's one thing, right? What's one thing you can do during your menstrual phase? What if you just don't post on social media during your menstrual phase, right? Like, what if that's it? You just give yourself, 4 days or whatever it is, five to 7 days, where you just not that week, or you're not going. Even that, you can say about it, I'm not going to go on my stories. Like, I'm not going to be there. I'll post things, but I won't necessarily be that. A lot of my clients find a lot of success in batch and scheduling. Mm-hmm. I'm a off the cuff kind of person, so that's been a challenge for me. Things like emails, writing emails, right? Like you want to do that once a week, which I have tried so many different rhythms with that, but I have found that there is some, like when there's something that it's so important to you that you want to be consistent. When I'm writing an email, I can write it from whatever energy I'm in, right? Like I may not write an email the week of my late luteal or my menstrual phase based on how I'm feeling, but what if I just talk about how I'm feeling? You know what I mean? Like, what if that's what it is? I think you'll find a lot more of the freedom that you're seeking in your business if you're allowing that freedom, because generally what's blocking that freedom is ourselves.
I want to tell you what happened with my OBs yesterday because it is so relevant to this conversation and everything we've been talking about. So yesterday I went in for my 18-week appointment, and I'm not super convinced I like this practice I'm at right now. I'm in a high-risk OB clinic because the midwives I've used before have both kicked me out because I've now had two C-sections, and I'm considered like a disaster, apparently. I disagree, but I see new doctors every time. And this time I had a young man. And towards the end of my appointment, I brought up the fact that I would like to have them edit the date that they have my due date as, because the due date that they've chosen is based on my last menstrual period. But the due date that I'm tracking is based on my ovulation date, and they are not the same. And I've been tracking BBT for 4 years, and I can clearly, plain as darn day, see the big, huge freaking roller coaster drop, and then it shoots up where I ovulated. I also track cervical fluid and how I feel, and all of that data is there. And it's like, okay, I know the date I ovulated. No, like I know. This is the date I ovulated. And so my due date that I'm tracking is one day before what they're tracking. It's not a big deal. It's not a huge difference. But it's just really annoying when in my head, I'm like, I'm here for my 18-week appointment, and they're trying to say that I'm 17 weeks and 6 days. I'm like, no, I'm 18 weeks pregnant. Let's just all get on the same page. It's going to make things a lot easier. So I bring this up to this male OB, and he proceeds to tell me, and this other guy had also come in, I guess his attending physician, who was also a man OB. He proceeds to tell me that the LMP is the quote unquote gold standard of dating a pregnancy. And I was like, but what about women who don't ovulate on exactly the 14th day, or have a 35-day cycle, or have PCOS, or any of the other reasons why your cycle is not exactly the same? Or maybe it's one of the first 5 or 7 cycles after you get your period back post-pregnancy, where nothing is regular and it's all doing like this, but you can get pregnant on any one of those ovulation cycles. And he's like, well, the luteal phase is always exactly the same. So we know that the last menstrual period date is the date that your pregnancy is from. And I was like, no, it's not. I have been tracking for 4 years, and I can show you my BBT tracker, and I can show you the graph, and I can show you the cycle analysis. And there is a min, a max, and an average for luteal cycle length. Guess what? It varies. And this other guy tried to corroborate his story, and they both decided, well, we're not going to change your date. So I showed him my cycle. I showed him the chart. I showed him the analysis, and I was like, this is not true. Allie, they ignored my lived experience. They ignored the data that I was showing them, and were like, we're going to go off of our complete lack of experience and book learning that we learned in our limited medical education, and this is what we're going to stick with. And I was like, if this was a test, you failed it, because the way that you responded to me and over this very minor detail that I've brought up at this point is indicative of the way that you're going to respond to me in labor, or later on if I come in with something going on, when I'm like, hey, I'm experiencing XYZ thing, or this is the data that I've been keeping track of in my notes. And if you're going to ignore all of that and be like, well, we're just going to do what the book says, it makes me want to find another practice. Because this idea of I know better than you do, I'm the doctor, and this is what my book said, And that's more valuable than the data and your experience that you're showing me. It's just perpetuated in the medical field all over. So when at the beginning, when you're like, I'm not a medical professional, and ask your doctor, it's like, they don't even know. They don't
That's
know better
no.
than you do. You're a woman and you've actually studied this and talked about it with many, many women who have valuable lived experience. And I'm just so fed up with the whole my book learning is better than yours thing. And I encounter it all the time in what I teach because so many people are like, well, I've been a childhood expert for 20 years and I've literally never heard of EC and this is impossible. And it's like, I'm looking at my 16-month-old baby taking herself to the potty, pooping on the toilet on her own. You cannot tell me that this does not work. I'm watching it work. I've watched it work for over a year. And people are so set on this idea of what the doctor said and the book said and the teaching said. And we just can't live that way anymore. We don't know all the answers.
Heather,
I
I
always
would highly recommend you get another practice. And the other thing I recommend, especially considering you've had two, I would call them traumatic births, look for a doula. I'm a certified doula, and I had a doula at my birth, and because of the way my second birth went, I don't know what I would have done without a doula. If I hadn't had midwives that believed in physiological birth and knew how to support it, I would have had a cesarean. He was stuck. I had to do spinning baby exercises to get him to back up and then re-enter. And if anyone's treating you like that, you're not going to be able to relax in your birth.
Honestly, I'm probably going to end up with a scheduled C-section this time just because I have a rare anomaly-shaped uterus and it does not birth babies very well.
Yeah.
But even if I do need a C-section, these are not the doctors that I want doing it because they can't even listen to me. And they're coming in with this idea, and I'm not the only one that's experienced this. They're coming in with this idea that I know better than you. And I told them, forgive me, but you have never had a cycle in your entire life.
Yeah.
And you never will. Who are you to tell me that I'm wrong?
I was gonna say, men on top of that, how are you gonna tell me what's going on with my body? I can tell you what's going on with my body. I'm intuitive and I know, and we're in a new generation of women, and it's just the rest of the world has not caught up yet. I'm sorry that you experienced that. I'm in pain thinking about that you went through that, or any woman that has to. And I also think about the women in my world who like their first pregnancies and they don't have that advocacy for themselves because they're like, I've already done this before, right? My one client that's on the third baby, kind of a similar story where they were just like pushing and pushing the C-section. And she had to advocate for herself so much during that process. It was so emotionally toiling. You're already like bringing out life, but then you've got to fight for what you know, right? Like, you know this about yourself. I have a mom who was told that she couldn't have children in the early 70s. She got into a car accident, crushed her pelvis. They told her, you'll never have a child. She had 5 C-sections. First one was an emergency. The rest were scheduled. You're not supposed to have 5 C-sections anymore, I don't think.
I know people who
She's
do.
all tied up now in her 60s. Yeah, it's wild. So, but she was told she couldn't have kids for the longest time, and then she did. And then she's been like chronically ill for the last 20 years, not necessarily, maybe related, maybe not, but I've watched so many doctors tell her that they know better. And she says the first thing she does when she walks into a new doctor, which she's this close to never walking into a doctor again and just not figuring out what's wrong with her after 20 years. Yeah, she's close. So she said to me, she's like, as soon as I walk in and they're like, I've got you all figured out. She's like, nope, done. You don't. You talk to me for 5 minutes. It's not going to work that way. But I see in all of that, I see light because I see women like us sitting and having these conversations that I don't believe have been had in the past. So I can see a light, I can see a way forward, but I want to speak directly to this community because I feel this. I know Heather feels this. It's like when you're doing something like EC and talking about that, or cycle syncing or whatever it is, where people haven't accepted that there's another way to do things, when you're doing things because you are a woman who does life differently, you are going to have to be the person who speaks up more, who has to advocate for herself before people catch on. We're going to look back in, I don't know, 10 years. I hope I'm going to give it that. And people are going to be like, oh yeah, EC, everybody's doing EC. Oh, cycle syncing. Yeah, I've been doing that for 10 years. You know what I mean? That's why this work is so important. That's why this community is so important, because each one of you are, using EC in your day-to-day life with your children and things like that. This is how we change the world, right? Like, we just saw an election that didn't necessarily reflect everyone's values. It's very divisive, all of these things. How we change and move forward is really the stuff that we're doing here, whether there's 4 of us or there's 400 of us, the more it makes our passions and what we're here to do. You're people who want to help other people. And when you operate from that way, you can't be wrong. And your work is so important. This is why I teach cycle syncing, because women just like you need to understand that nothing's wrong with them. And we can't let things like burnout and exhaustion and people telling us how to live our lives that are totally wrong get in the way of what we put on this earth to do, because this is how we change the world right here. And so beautiful what you're doing, and having a community of women who can link arms together and say, hey, we're going to push through this obstacle together, because nothing is more powerful than women together, and specifically angry women who are just like pissed off and done. There's nothing more powerful than that.
Thank you so much,
"What?
Allie. We
Thank you
we
so
could
much for
keep talking
having
about
me."
this all day. There's so
Yeah.
much more to this conversation. So thank you so much for sharing this space with us and your time. I really appreciate you.